So cell are an organism basic unit of structure and function. So we are going to look at the lowest level of organization of an organism, that is cell, taking into consideration. So the cell is the lowest level of organization that can perform all activity required for life. That is, the cell carry on metabolic activity, the cell carry on the productions of whole lot of hormones in the body, the cell carry on the regulations of body temperature, the cells carry on the repair of damaged tissues, and cells carry on the reproductive process of an organism. So the cell, being at the most fundamental level, it is like the engine of the entire body. So the cell carry on a whole lot of activity that is needed by the human body, right? So all cells, now we all should understand that these few basic components that all cells, they have similar thing that is in common. That is, they are enclosed by membrane. That is, all cells has or cell membranes, and that membrane prevent or help to regulate substances that enter into the cell cytoplasm and leave the cell cytoplasm. Then they use DNA as their genetic material. That is the deoxyribonucleic acid that is formed within the organ they are called the nucleus, that directs or control the entire they control the entire blueprint of the organism. So within the DNA is where you find all the information of the traits that are passed on from the parents to that offspring, and that particular blueprint that should make that organism. So it is within the DNA. So all cells basically, they have these two characteristics, right? So apart from that, they also regulate their internal environment. Then another thing is that all cells also process energy for themselves. That is, they carry on energy processing from in the process of cellular respiration. That is using the phases of glycolysis or phospholactic oxidation, carrying on citric acid cycle or the pyruvic, so the ability of the cell to divide is the basis of all reproduction, growth, and repair of multicellular organisms. That is, the ability of a cells to divide means the cell, whenever the cell is dividing, there are basically two processes, right? Because when you look at the human body, the human body has somatic cells and then the reproductive cells, right? So if a cell is going through the process of mitosis, we know that is or it has to do with growth and either growth or repair of this organism, right? Then the cell is going through the meiosis, that is, the cell is going through reproductive or division process, right? So these are just few the general concept about the cell, right? This general concept about the cell, it tells you what this fundamental unit of life is like, and what kind of function and this kind of unit carry on in the human body, right? So these are the basic characteristics of a cell. And remember that the cell theory that was revised by Rudolf Valgus, he said that all cells comes from pre-existing cells, right? He say that cell is a structural and functional unit of life. And then the other thing he also says that cell has a cytoplasmic membrane and nucleus. That is why I just talked about here, which is cells are enclosed by membranes, which is the cytoplasmic membranes, and they also contain a nucleus. And the cell has a genetic material, that is they has a genetic material as their information, DNA as their information, right? So let's take us a view of or cell using high power electrons microscope, right? Looking at this site here, it is the nucleus of the cells. You observe that the microscope, which is the electrons microscope, go deeper and give you a high level of resolution to observe those organelles level within a cell. So basically, there are two, basically cells. When we in other videos we talk about that cells, when you are classifying a cell, when you classify it based on their size, we understand that cells are based on their type. Sorry, we understand that cells, they are classified into two categories. That is, either the cell is a eukaryotic cell or that cell is a prokaryotic cell. So a eukaryotic cell are the cell that has membrane enclosed organelles, and they are largest of which that is usually the nucleus, right? So in a eukaryotic cell, you understand an organism like human and plant animals, they contain a eukaryotic cell. A eukaryotic cell has a membrane organelles. What is a membrane organelles? Those organelles that are formed within the cell that keep the cell functioning and carry on specific functions. That is, we have in the eukaryotic cell, you have a nucleus, which is enclosed by a nucleus envelope. You have ribosomes, you have an endoplasmic reticulum, rough and smooth. You have cytoskeleton. You have lysosomes. You have a Golgi's apparatus. These are all membrane bound organelles that are enclosed within the cell, right? In the eukaryotic cell. So all eukaryotic cells, they are form part of the organisms that are in the domain eukarya, right? So then look at, by comparison, the next cell, we say the next cell is a prokaryotic cell, right? So a prokaryotic cell is the simplest, is a very simple cell, and usually smaller and does not contain nucleus or nucleus membranes, right? So that is, in a prokaryotic cell, these are cells that, for example, organisms like bacteria contain. So a bacterial cell is a prokaryotic cell. And if you look at a bacterial cell, you observe that the bacterial cell does not have what we call a nucleus. It has a genetic or DNA material that is scattered through all the cytoplasmic membrane, the cytoplasm, but they do not have a nucleus. That is, the genetic material is not enclosed into a nucleus envelope. It has not been condensed in the form of chromatins. So prokaryotic cells, organisms like bacteria, archaeas, and these are organisms that contain prokaryotic cells, right? So basically, the prokaryotic cell, when you look at this is why evolution is very important, because evolution tells us that prokaryotic cells is the first cells that were involved, that got involved, right? And on Earth, and then over time changes, and then the two mutations, you observe that prokaryotic cell give rise to what we call eukaryotic cells. So despite being small, but they are also very significant, especially the bacteria. These are organisms that contain prokaryotic cells, right? Then we say bacteria, archaea are prokaryotic. I just talked about that. Then plants, animals, fungi, and all other forms of life are eukaryotic cells, specifically formed within the domain eukarya that we will further discuss. So this is a view of the prokaryotic, and this large cell you are seeing here is our eukaryotic cell, right? And then this smaller one that you are seeing, the raw shape form, it is prokaryotic cell. It's a typical E. coli bacterial cell, right? So let's get there. So this is a eukaryotic cell, as I said, and this next one within the eukaryotic cell, the eukaryotic cell is surrounded by a membrane. That is a membrane or cell membrane. This cell membrane is a phospholipid layer. That is, it has a kind of chemical or property that enable it to interact with both liquid oil substance and what or liquid substance. So this permits ions such as sodium, potassium, chloride, entering into the cells and what leaving the cell. This is a semi-permeable membrane that enable what kind of substance to enter the cell and what should not enter the cell, right? So the next here is the cytoplasm that you are seeing. This large content here that you are seeing the mass around is very large content, not this purple content now, but this large side that the arrow is pointed is that contain these organelles that are within is the cytoplasm. Now the cytoplasm is that fluid content within the cell that hosts all of the organelles within the cell of a eukaryote. Then we have organelles. These are organelles. This that you are seeing here in the chorus. These are organelles, including this one is organelles too, right? So this is a nucleus. Calling it, this is a nucleus, right? This nucleus here, it has a nucleus in vitro and a nucleus pole, and it has a nucleolus, and within this nucleus it has a dense chromosome in the form of dense or DNA material called chromatins. So these chromatins are packed together using histones, proteins, and nucleosomes, right? So here's a prokaryotic cell. Now the essence of this illustration is to give you a clear differences from what I just previously discussed about the eukaryotic cell and that of the prokaryotic cell. I'll inform you that the eukaryotic cell is very large and it has a nucleus and it has a membrane bound organelle, right? So these are the membrane bound organelles that you're seeing here, which is a nucleus, and these other organelles such as lysosomes or ribosomes or peroxisomes, right? So now when you look at the prokaryotic cell, you observe that it has no nucleus, but it has DNA material there, but there is no nucleus. So that is, the genetic material is loosely formed within the cytoplasm of the prokaryotic cell. Then it has a membrane also. It has a membrane that is that kind of membrane that the prokaryote has is what we call petoglycans. Contains amino group of I call it carbohydrates. So that is it. So basically the continuity of life is based on inheritable information in the form of DNA, right? So life continue based on those information that are kept within the organisms, and this information are kept within the nucleus, right? I have talked about. And in this nucleus, there is a structure formed within this nucleus called chromosomes. Now, chromosomes within the chromosomes pack is a packing of the genetic material that you see densely tagged together, which we call the chromatins, right? So chromosome contain most of the genetic materials in the form of DNA, which is deoxyribonucleic acid. So individual organism has about 46 chromosomes, right? So each of in terms of reproduction, right? Your parents got 23 chromosomes, so they gave you 46 chromosomes, right? So an individual with a 23 chromosome, you observe that this individual has all of these 23 chromosomes. There are 21 of these chromosomes. They are what we call autosomes, meaning they do not participate in what we call they are not reproductive chromosomes, right? Then two of these chromosomes, which is the what we call the reproductive chromosome. For example, we say they are the X and Y chromosomes that contain the genetic material as it relates to reproduction, right? DNA is a substance of genes. Yes. So a DNA deoxyribonucleic acid, deoxy, that means there's a molecule, there's a monomer of the nucleic acid, right? That contain the or that contain a ribose sugar. Then that contains a ribose sugar, and that also they contain a phosphate and other nucleic acid attached to this. So DNA is a substance of what the gene, because the gene are those nucleotide sequence that form within the cell. So three nucleotide sequence made of a gene. Yes, made of a gene, and those genes are what we refer to as the DNA of an organism. These are the structure that this DNA that will make up the genes. These are the structures that contain the information of that organism. Because if you go deeply, when you are discussing molecular biology, you will understand that at the level of the gene, three of the nucleotide sequence that we will talk about, the three of them will code for a specific gene, and that gene might be activated or might not be activated, but this gene will code for a particular what protein, that is from replication of the genetic material in terms of reproduction. Your DNA is replicated, and later it is what transcribed, then it is also translated into what protein, and there are a lot of processes that occur on it, right? So genes are the unit of inheritance that is transmit information from parents to offspring. So that is within that gene that I just discussed, those informations are what you inherit from those information that you are obtaining. You means you have inherited those information from your parents, and those information is what make you as an individual, is what give you a phenotypic or description, is what give you a genotype description. So DNA structure and function. Each chromosome has one long DNA molecule. Yes, which with hundreds or thousands of genes. So with a concept that if you enter into the cell nucleus, you get to the chromatids. In the chromatids, we have the chromosomes. So now the chromosomes, now you meet up with what we call on the chromosome there is a long thread, but the chromosome is densely packed stuff, right? So within the chromosome you see that kind of threadless structures called the chromatids. So these long chromosomes molecules, they contain what we call DNA, right? Then this DNA thread has thousands of genes, thousands of nucleotide sequences that are formed within them. So DNA is inherited by offspring from their parents. That is you, the child, or you, the little organism. Every DNA you inherit those DNA from your parents. DNA control the development and the maintenance of organism. Sure. So because when we talk about development and maintenance of the organism, that means it is within the DNA that the information, which is those genes that code for specific proteins, will occur. So if you are to grow, then that means your gene must have a growth hormones that or growth hormone gene, right? So if that gene is transcribed into the body, it is replicated, and it is transcribed, is activated, that means the body will produce a protein that will go and carry on development within the body. That means again genes will be activated, several genes will be activated to maintain the body, to remove waste product, to help you regulate your brain function. So there are a lot of genes that are in the DNA. So if you want to like read the entire genome of an organism, it's like you are reading more than 900,000 book pages. These are the letters that are there. It's just like a thread of the gene of DNA. So there's a very complex thing within the eukaryotic cell. So there's just an illustration of what we are talking about. You have the nuclear containing DNA. So within the male sperm cell, the head of the male sperm cell, you have the nucleus there, and within the nucleus you have the DNA there, right? So within this is the female egg. So within the eggs here you have the nucleus, and the nucleus has a dense like material here called the chromatin, and this thread like each of the thread like chromatins, these structures has a chromosome, right? So basically in the nucleus you have a chromatin, I mean you have a chromosome, right? And in the chromosome you will see a thread like structure of DNA that we call the chromatins, right? So now if the sperm cell and the egg cell the sperm cell fertilize the egg cell, this is the process of fertilization here. And then you have the sperm, you have the egg. So basically then you have the fertilized egg, with DNA from both parents, right? So in the embryo cells with copies of inheritance. Now these cells now forming or blastulas, dividing, specializing. So these stem cells now, the stem cells divide. After they are divide, is now start to separate. I mean, function. Each of these cells start to form a different function and specialization level. Like you when you go further, you start to discuss developmental biology, or that of which is embryology. Tells you that the embryo after fertilization move in 3 days from the fallopian tube towards the uterus, and in that process the cell is dividing, and when the cell is dividing they are forming from two division. They divide into 4, they divide into 8, and then so on, form a mass of cells that are specialized, and then these specialized cells start to, some of them start to specialize to form the nervous system first day. Some of them start to specialize and form the heart and other organs within the human body. So these cells give rise to this organism, this boy child, this organism, right? So this is why we say life is it has to come through an interaction of organization of the emergence properties. So you see what happens here, right? From just a liquid to now a very solid, liquefied human being, right? So that is the offspring with thread inherited from parents. So now we have the DNA. Each DNA molecule is made out of 2 long chains arranged in a double helix. Yeah. So a DNA, every DNA, when you take that thread, is in what we call helix, or almost like a ladder-like structure. So this double helix DNA, these DNA are arranged as double helix. That means there are 2 strands that are passing, connecting with each other in the form of a ladder. Now each link of this chain is one of 4 kinds of chemical building block called nucleotides. Yes. So in all these chains there is all nucleotides form all these chains, right? So let's take a look at this, right? So this is the DNA that is dense in here, and then when you try to take a view at it, this is what I've been discussing about. So each of these nucleotides, this is a nucleotide, right? So this nucleotide here, it has what we call or carbon sugar, or carbon sugar, that is a pentose sugar. It has a phosphate group attached to it, and it has a nucleotide. So there's a nitrogenous base, which is the nitrogenous base, right? So it has a carbon sugar, phosphate group, and that of what nitrogenous base that gave you a complete what we call it just gave you a complete genetic material referred to as genes, right? So these lectures here, you see A represent adenine, C represent cytosine, T represent thymine. So and you see lecture G, which represent guanine. So in terms of DNA, the DNA has many it has adenine mean there is a ratio of pairing. There's a base sequence pairing, meaning if this side has what we say is in a double helix like you are seeing here, right? In a quarter print here. So meaning that if adenine must pair with what? Thymine and cytosine must pair with what? Guanine in terms of DNA, but in terms of RNA, adenine can pair with what we call uracil, right? So that is just a clear difference. It's an introductory video. Nucleus, we have DNA and the double helix structure. There's a single strand of the DNA, right? It's a nucleotide. This entire thing is a single strand, but it's a nucleotide also, right? So we want to look at gene control protein production indirectly. Yes, the DNA is transcribed into what we call RNA, then translated to a protein. So each of those genes each of those lectures you see, three of them is what we refer to as gene. Three set make a gene. Three of them make a gene. Three set make a gene. Three make a gene. So those three that will make a gene, they after they have been replicated, meaning there is a proteins that are going to open up that very helix structure of DNA, and then when they open up it, they will replicate and form new strand that is identical to the parental strand. Those new strand now will be what? Transcribed into what we call RNA, specifically messenger RNA. That is a further course, right? That you are going to post for the view, for you viewer to get an understanding about what I'm saying. So the RNA then will translate into protein, and then this protein will be specified, activated as whether it's a lipoprotein, whether it's phosphorylated protein, or that is whether it's a glycoprotein stuff. So an organism genome is the entire set of genetic information. So when you look at what we call genomes, or genome is a complete set of genetic information of an organism. The complete set, that is your complete information of the entire organism, is what we refer to as genome. There is almost like what we call a library. When you go to the library, you find a whole lot of books with different, so that carry different information, right? So the genome is just like a library for the entire organism, where you find all of the information of that organism. So that's system biology at the level of cell and molecule. So the human genomes and those of many other organisms have been sequenced using DNA sequencing machines. These are all modern technologies that are used to help us understand the DNA, help in crime investigation. So like you see this guy, this is a very modern center, research center, that is using bioinformatics and keeping data of genes, and using PCR machines to replicate and genetic materials and study the base sequence of the of various organisms. So this is in technology stuff that is trapping the cell. So if you look at this, the outer membrane of the cell that we call the cell membrane, and this is cytoplasm right here, and the nucleus within the center, and that's it. So advances in system biology at the unicellular and multicellular molecular level depends on high output technology. Yes, these days we have, over the period of time, there have been a lot of argument about gene and about the genetic material of an organism. So now the entire technology has made things very easy for we, the learners, to understand, to study our genetic component, to study our body at the molecular level. So there is a branch of biology that we call bioinformatics, which use computer or tools to process large data, or that is a genome of an organism. They use those things to process huge data in terms of research study, in terms of provide producing vaccine and all stuff. So that is it. So thanks for watching this video, and we will stop here for today. And thank you very much for your time. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel